Welcome everyone to Ilium Biology. Today we are going to discuss about some mnemonics that would help us to remember some basic examples and some basic terminologies that are frequently asked in the NEET examination. Let's start with it. The first mnemonic is to learn the examples of cannabinoid drugs. You must have learned about opioid drugs, cannabinoid drugs, cocaine. So today we are going to learn the examples of cannabinoid drugs by a very simple mnemonic, and the mnemonic would also help us to remember about the pregnancy test. Now Mary wants to check whether she is pregnant or not. What she'll do, she'll just check HCG in urine. HCG is human chorionic gonadotropin. We learn about this hormone in our animal reproduction chapter. So in order to test for the pregnancy, Mary would test her HCG. So Mary checks HCG, that means human chorionic gonadotropin, that is a pregnancy test. So by this mnemonic, you can also learn the examples of cannabinoid drugs and about the pregnancy test. So by Mary, you would remember marijuana, a type of cannabinoid drug. It is very common these days. Next is checks. CH of checks would help us to remember charas. So charas is the another example. Next is H stands for hashish. Next is C stands for cannabinoids. Yes, all these are examples of cannabinoids. And the next is G, which would stand for ganja. That means marijuana, charas, hashish and ganja. All these are 4 examples of cannabinoid drugs, which we now remember by Mary checks HCG. So that's it. That's the first mnemonic. Now by the second mnemonic, we would learn the examples of false fruits. There are many examples of false fruits, but in this video, I would only tell you about the examples that have been mentioned in NCERT book. Now to remember the examples of false fruits, just remember fast cash. Whenever we go to ATM, our ATM machine gives us an option of fast cash, whether you want to withdraw fast cash or not. So by remembering fast cash, you can remember the examples of false fruits. The first alphabet is F, that would stand for false fruits. Next is A for apple, that we learn in lower classes, A for apple. Next is ST, that would remind us about strawberry, and the last is cash. Cash would help us to remember cashew. So apple, strawberry and cashew, these are 3 examples given in NCERT for false fruits, and you have to remember this because they are frequently asked in a NEET examination. The next mnemonic would help us to remember the examples of freshwater edible fishes. This question is frequently asked in exam about freshwater fishes and marine fishes which are edible. So to remember the examples of freshwater edible fishes, just remember one thing, fresh RCC. What is RCC? RCC is reinforced concrete cement that is used to form roofs and lay roads. So whenever RCC is lead, we say that it is a fresh RCC. So by remembering fresh RCC, you can remember the examples of edible freshwater fishes. Fresh would definitely stand for freshwater fishes. R would help us to remember rohu fish. Then comes C, which would remind us about katla fish, and the next is C, that helps us to remember about common carp fish. That means rohu, katla, and the last one common carp. All these fishes are freshwater fishes and are frequently used as edible fishes. Very important question for NEET. Next one are the examples for edible marine fishes. The last one were the edible freshwater fishes, and these are edible marine fishes. And to remember this, just remember a very basic feature of plasma membrane, that plasma membrane is a highly selective membrane. It is a semi-permeable membrane that makes it a highly selective membrane. So by remembering that plasma membrane is a highly selective membrane, you can remember the examples of edible marine fishes. Let's start. Plasma means P, membrane for M, highly is HI, selective is S, and membrane is M. By P, you can remember pomfrets. M would remind you of mackerel. HI would make us remember hilsa. S would help you to remember sardines, and M would help you to remember marine. That means pomfrets, mackerel, hilsa and sardines. All these fishes are marine fishes and are frequently used fishes as edible fishes. So another important question for NEET, we just remembered by a very simple sentence. Next is fifth mnemonic. Herein I would help you to remember about introns and exons. First I'll tell you what are these See, after transcription, what we get is a raw mRNA which has two basic parts, introns and exons. Exons would express themselves, introns will never express themselves. So by a process called RNA splicing, we would cut out these introns. We would cut out these introns by splicing, and these introns are then of no use. So in the final mature mRNA, you would have only exons. You would have only exons. So just to remember about exons and introns, just remember a simple word, exons express. Exons express, EX. EX for exons, EX for express. That means only exons are present in mature mRNA, introns are cut by splicing. Actually, we know the concept, but somehow we get confused whether we are removing the introns or the exons. So there is no need of confusion, just remember exons express. Next is very frequently confusing word, ADAXIAL and ABAXIAL. Now we very well know that the upper surface is called as ADAXIAL surface and the lower surface is called as ABAXIAL surface, but we get confused. We get confused in exams whether the ADAXIAL is the upper one or the lower one. From today, never get confused, because I'll tell you a very simple trick to remember this. See, in ABAXIAL there are two alphabets, BA. This BA would represent base. This BA would represent base. So base is always on the lower side. So ABAXIAL is the lower surface. Base is lower surface. So ABAXIAL is always a lower surface. I've got another trick to remember this, as we already know about a gland called as adrenal gland. Do you guys know why this is called as adrenal gland? That's because we just as we saw ad would represent about upper. That means ad is upper, and renal, as we all know, renal represents kidney, renal artery, renal vein. So renal is kidney. So adrenal means above kidney, the upper surface of kidney. That's why this gland is called as adrenal gland. So just by remembering the adrenal gland location, you can alleviate your confusion between ADAXIAL and ABAXIAL surface. Or even if that doesn't help, just remember ABAXIAL has got BA, that means base. So that's it. Thank you very much for watching us. I hope these mnemonics would help us you a lot. Thank you very much for watching us. Stay connected with us.